All right, so I'm back. It's been a while. Usually the month of November is a difficult month for me. October was difficult for me this month or this year as well. So today I'm looking at instead. Oh, yep, there we go. See, there we go. I'm over here messing stuff up. All right, yeah, there we go. So I updated the stream info. Perfect. So today I'm actually looking at some Maui code. I've got a talk coming up that I submitted, oh God, a couple times. But it's basically a talk about behavior driven development from like the meta level, whereby like the behaviors, like defining behaviors in code is one thing, but if we can't define behaviors as teams, whatever behavior we have as a team is going to be the behavior that we have as we approach the code, and that is going to dictate how good the code is and how well maintained and managed the code base is. So, kind of looking at this from I've been around the block a couple times, and I've seen a good number of ways to try and build applications. And what I'm learning is that every time I have a team that sets out with good intentions and we say we're not going to allow X, Y, or Z, the second we couch on X, Y, and Z fall like dominoes directly after it, and we end up in a less than ideal situation when it comes to maintaining the software. Giving you an example, right? Um, I've gone on record as saying the locator or the service locator pattern is not an anti pattern. You people just do it wrong. And that is the truth, right? Like there's certain things that you cannot, there's certain problems you have to use a service locator to solve. The problem that people run into is solving problems with the service locator that it doesn't really belong to solve. Like it can solve the problem, but there are other better ways to solve it, right? So understanding that we, the people that write the software and the behaviors that we have dictate what the behaviors are of the system and what the code base looks like. Another case, when you have a team that's excessively on dry, I find that there's a lot of needless abstractions. I find that there's a lot of, while there's quote unquote no duplication of code, there are things that are tightly coupled that shouldn't be tightly coupled. And I say this as somebody that's done it myself. Like I've made these mistakes myself. So anyway, that's what the talk is about. But the code base that I'm using is going to be a Maui code base for the talk because it's a .NET conference, and it's not .NET Conf, but it is a .NET related technology conference. And I wanted to use a sample domain for the behavior driven design to kind of express the problems that I see. I had this conversation with somebody that was on a project with me about a year and a half ago, which is the reason why this talk came up. And we were coming to the real. I was coming to the realization that a lot of the things that I've seen are not done correctly, and I was thinking that things should be done differently. Fast forward, I spent some time playing with Flutter, learning how it works and how its ecosystem does things and how they organize code. And what I realized is that Flutter is doing exactly what I had already thought things should be doing. So the question then becomes, how do I do those same things in .NET? So this is kind of a foray into showing how we should structure code, um, how we should define our behaviors as a team, and how those behaviors as a team will help the code uh, dictate its own behaviors properly. So, like I said, it gets kind of meta, but I hopefully I haven't done it yet, but I hopefully will be able to tie it all the way around. And right now, I'm working on the good code samples. So, in order to show this, I have to show kind of like a bad state and a good state. But in order to get the bad state, I want to write the good state first, if that makes sense, because I want the thing working, and then I'm going to take all of the stuff that I've abstracted out and I've set my architecture up to do the way I want. I'm going to show doing it the same way, hopefully. I'm going to show. I don't know if it's going to work out correctly, but I'm going to try and show the way I've seen it done, and the fact that the view model ends up becoming this place where a lot of glue code gets exercised. I.e., I've seen like people call API clients in the view model. I've seen like I the, we do repository calls in the view model. That's not my preference, but everyone has their preference on how things should be architected. And when you aren't the one making the decisions, you voice your opinion, you explain why you think it should be done a different way, and then you move on, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about delivering value. So I'm not going to sit here and die on every single hill that comes up. If client X wants me to use Whiz Bang Fizzbus in order to be able to get access to their messaging queue, then I'll use Whiz Bang Fizzbus. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me, right? Because at the end of the day, I can only do what the requirements allow me to do. And if there are going to be technical requirements, as long as business requirements, then I just have to respect that. It's no big deal. So what you see here is actually the README for what I think I'm going to be doing on this. Actually, you know what? I was having audio issues the last time I was streaming, so let me go verify that I'm not having audio issues before I go too much further down this rabbit hole. Yes, I am streaming live to the Twitches channel. Yep, go to my own channel, listen to myself talk. Try that again. Okay, seems good. Cool. All right, so I'll get rid of myself from the chat. So what you're looking at is just the README. Generally, READMEs, when I do samples like this, I try and make the README the place where I define what the features and the functionality is going to be. I've already defined the main page features, which is probably more than I actually want to write, but I'll do it most likely. And this is going to be the place where you actually add. Oh, what are you building, Rodney? Smart. I'm building an RX tracker. So you like me talking to you. Like I figured what I would do is I would actually live stream all of the work that I'm doing anyway. Well, not all of it, but some of the work that I'm doing anyway for this talk, so that you can kind of see how I've gone about thinking through these things. Because the main thing about the talk is that like it's just code, right? Code gets written to solve a problem. So we should really understand and identify and define the problems rather than worry a lot about how to technically solve it. We should understand what the problem is that we're trying to solve in the first place. And I think that's the main thing where I've messed up in the past. Like I'm always like, okay, well I got to bring in this library and that library and this technology and that technology. And it's like, well, what are the business requirements? Like, do we need any of that stuff? And over the last, let's call it 8 years, I really started to become a stickler on that. Anytime we talk about anything on any of my teams, the first question I always ask is, what are the requirements? Because if you're the developer working on it and you can't articulate the requirements, we are already too far gone, right? Like we've already done too much. First things first, you have to be able to look at the word problem and read that Susie has 3 apples and Johnny has 4 pears. And when you put them together, they've got 7 pieces of fruit, 3 apples and 4 pears, right? Like you got to be able to read into the word problem that the business is putting in front of you. So I like to lay it out here. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. And from here on out, I'm not going to be mad. I'm just going to do the work and you guys can just look at it later because it doesn't look like anybody's going to show up on a Saturday. It's raining here too, so there's that. So this is an application to schedule, track, and medication report. Report taken medication. Maybe I think I'm gonna end up so the given medication, receive reminders and explicitly acknowledge the time was taken. Okay, so that's good enough, right? That's the high level problem statement, and I'm sure I'll come back to that 1,500 times before the end of this. But okay, so like we've already got the main page, so and I've actually so this is where it's like I'm already doing things incorrectly, and I'm gonna just go ahead and say it like, oops, shame on me. So I started this, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna do the main page, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna do all this stuff, and I realized, well, I can't do any of that until I add medicine, right? So the first thing I did was define a feature, this main page, and realize, oh, I can't do the main page until I have actually added medicine in. So the being able to display a schedule requires me to have created a schedule, right? That's requirements. Can't put carts before horses, right? So looking at it, I was like, oh, well, I screwed that up. And then I went off and kind of wrote some of this functionality already because I was trying to put the pieces of the talk in place. So now I'm going to come back and define what it is that I want this add medicine screen to do. Um, I think that's where we're going to start. And then we'll go back and look at, I'll probably go back to start looking at the code and seeing where I am based upon what I think I wanted it to do in the first place. I want to be able to add medication by name, provide dosage, and it's not the ingestion type. What's the, oh gosh, what's the name of that? What is the name of that term? I will use ingestion. Provide dosage, ingestion, ingestion. There we go. We can spell. Let me see, the recurrence rule, and the time, and whether or not you need to have a meal. Because like I've had to take antibiotics for infections, and it's like, okay, well, antibiotic for infection, you gotta have it with a meal, so meal requirement, right? Meal. Okay, so we want to look up a medication by name, provide the dosage, the ingestion, the recurrence, the time, and whether or not we need to take it with a meal. And then we want it to put it on a calendar view, right? So maybe we want this to actually create a actual calendar. Maybe we, oh wait, no, that's going to be on the main page. So that this is just taking in the information. So that's all we need to do. So that means that based on this, we need to be able to, if we're going to look up, let me do this, be explicit, right? Define the requirements. If we're going to look up a medication by name, come on, we can do this. If we're going to look up a medication by name, that's going to require us to have some get all medications concept, right? So we're going to have to, at minimum, get all the medication to present to this page. And I don't really know what that looks like because I feel like there's no way you could display every single medication. So maybe you have like a cache and some lookup, and you're going and pulling data from the. Oh, maybe it's not that bad. I'm pretty sure I've already looked for some APIs that have medical information, but I don't know how well I want to subscribe to those because they start sending emails about drugs, and I don't do drugs. As I take a sip of coffee, I tell you I don't do drugs. Yeah, caffeine's a drug. Dun, dun, dun. Anyway, so I want to look up the medication by name, and then once I look up the medication by name, I'm going to provide the dosage, how you take the medication, how often you have to take the medication, and what time. Ooh, I think recurrence and time have to go together. Because like, let's say you have to take it twice daily, right? So then you would want to take it twice daily. So you would want the time to go with, yeah. So these two things have to be together. So I'm gonna try and denote that they have to be together to some degree. It's probably bad notation, but these two things need to be together because if I set it up to take it once a day, then I need to set it up to take it once a day at a time. If I set it up to take it twice a day, I can set it up to take it I would want it. I would want the system to be able to ask me what time do you want to take it in the morning, what time do you want to take it in the evening. If I can take it 3 times, 4 times, whatever the case may be, I would want to be able to say to take in a value per recurrence. So times is going to be value per recurrence. All right. So all right. So that's, I mean, there's really not much to adding medication, right? Other than that, so we look up the medication that's available to us. We provide uh, the dosage, so how many milligrams or how many grams or whatever the case, milliliters, yeah, whatever. If it's an injection. Oh, that's why I was using the J, because I was thinking injection but writing ingestion. Ugh. Anyway, ingestion. So how you actually take the medicine. So this would be things like maybe like a pill versus like topical versus inhalant. Oh, womp womp! I spelled it wrong. Go gadget jet brains. Oh, there we go. Inhalant, not int. Pill, topical, inhalant, and then maybe like an injection, right? I think we'll keep it to those for now. Recurrence, we will do like weekly, because I know that there are some medications that, like, my dog gets a shot every week. Weekly, daily, twice daily, thrice daily. I think I just need to do like daily times per day. I think that'll work. And then that'll just have to be something where we take it in and we'll have to explicitly. Oh, that means that the recurrence itself shouldn't just be an enum. So this is where it's like complexity, right? Like describing complexity. I could use a basic enum for recurrence, and then I would have to find a way to wrap recurrence with another value, or I could create a class that is specific for recurrence that allows me to do that with the enum itself. One of the things one of the things I've seen in other languages is you can use an enum and provide enums values, and enums are value, or not value types. They are reference types, but they have additional values other than just the numeric value that comes along with the enum's property name. So thinking about that, but like again, I don't want to make things complex where they don't have to be, but at the same time, I want to describe the complexity so that the software is maintainable. And if the concept of recurrence needs to have a numeric value along with the the then we sorry the number of times per a period, then we need to express that and just let it be expressed. Try and express it in a simple enough way, but express it and try not to hide it with primitives. One of the things that I'm starting to get to the point of in my programming is like primitives are not good at describing state. Case in point, if I have an int is an int. It's a number, but it has no context to the state that it describes, right? Versus if I have a recurrence amount, and that recurrence amount is an integer, right? Now that recurrence amount has a context and an understanding of what the state means. So yes, I could easily just use an int, and I probably will use an int for that thing. But the reality of it is that just using an int and calling it, I don't know, it gives it no actual context in the system. So when you pass it in, you don't know if it's a recurrence value, you don't know if it's a time value, you don't know what its actual context is and what matters. So I know that there are a lot of people, not a lot of people, there's some people that don't like this new wave of like type specific identification objects. But I'm starting to get to the point where representing state in a stateful layer, not necessarily in the data layer, right? But in a stateful layer, I don't like representing state as just primitives if I can help it. That's just me. And that's not like a hard and fast dogmatic rule. It's not like everything must. No, that's not like that. But it's certain things, right? Certain things I want to be beyond just a number or an integer that has no context to it whatsoever. Um, and okay, yeah, and down here are some of the open source libraries that I'm using. So I actually need to like move some of this around. So let's move that around. I think I just added. Let's move that around because that's there. I just added stateless because that one's awesome, and I'm going to put links to these from the repo at some point in the future before I actually deliver the talk. So definitely won't waste time on camera doing that. So I think this is enough for me to get to get back to the code that I already had started. Yeah, I think that's good enough for me. Okay, so now I'm going to get into. Actually, you know what? I think I'm at a point. Oh, let me see. Get status. Am I still on that branch? I shouldn't be on that branch. Dun dun dun. Oop, I have code sitting out. Yeah, I need to do this. Give me back my cursor. Uh, I saw somebody talking about old people losing their cursors, and I'm like, no, the cursor legitimately doesn't move sometimes. Like I move the mouse, and the cursor doesn't come across the screen properly. It's tragic. It's tragic. Get checkout main. Get status. Get add. Adding. Adding medication requirements. All right, so get pull origin main. Get stash. Is it? I think it's pop. Ha! It did work. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, stash and pop is not something I normally do from the command line, so that was interesting. Okay, good. So now I should be able to just check in the README, right? So I have tests. I made changes to domain, but I just want to, yeah, so let's do this. Straight to main, because it's just me, right? Doesn't matter. I don't need to pull request to update the README. Add. All right. So add medication requirements. Push. All right. Anyway. So now main is probably even more upset. But it doesn't matter. All right. So, oh, yep. I added everything anyway. So good at this. So this is muscle memory, right? Like I just add all the things because normally I don't commit directly to main, so it doesn't matter. Ooh, and I committed exceptions that are gonna blow stuff up too. Oh man, I'm so horrible at this. All right, so looking at the code, I'm actually gonna. Oh wait, you can see everything because I don't have a perfect. So I don't have a simulator up, so you can actually see this. I'm gonna move this over so I can look at it and we can talk about it. Um, yeah. So one of the things that I admired about Flutter and the way things were set up is, oh, everything is just in the same assembly. I was like, well, you couldn't do that in a .NET application. And then like I started what I normally do, which is I add a core assembly and a this assembly and a data assembly and a domain assembly, and I stopped myself. Like I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute. I subscribe to feature slices, right? So like I definitely understand vertical slices, and I definitely understand wanting to group my feature information together. And I was like, well, I could do this the same way I do in a Flutter application, right? So now I have just RX Tracker, right? Which is the name of the application, which is the application assembly, right? In the application assembly, I have my view models, I have my domain, I have my data, right? Like everything is right here. If I find myself needing another assembly, I'm thinking it's going to be for something that would be a shared library kind of concept anyway, or some type of shared, sure, but even that, like I've got my mediator definitions right here in this. I've got my navigation definitions right here, and my state design pattern definitions right here in the same thing. They're just siblings to the features, right? No big deal. So I don't think I'll need another one unless I have like a third party API surface that I truly want to segregate from the rest of the code. Like let's say I'm taking a dependency on like I don't know, like a Zebra scanner or something like that, right? Like I would want to completely remove any dependency of the third party pieces from my main assembly. That's when making another assembly in this world makes sense to me. But right now, I just have a single assembly. I have a single test assembly. I could separate out test assemblies if I want, but still, no need right now. And then this is the most important part, and I'm going to point this out because somebody did actually ask me this the other day when I was showing them this sample. It says, "Well, Rodney, why not? Like you have this feature folder here, and you have everything mirrored here. So why aren't you, why aren't you just putting all of that directly in the Maui project?" And here's why. I've been doing .NET development a long time. In that time, I have been bitten time and again by Framework X and the promise and the truth of it, and it always ends up going away and replaced by something new and something better and something great every time. And I end up having to port an application from one technology to another. Case in point, I'm currently in the middle of a Maui migration, right? So I don't want to couple my application to a user interface. This is no different than if I was to create a web API and have a UI separate, so that way I am not coupled and I can have a headless offering to my API surface. Right. This is no different. What this allows me to do is develop a Maui UI, and then if I wanted to do an Avalonia UI or a Uno UI, I should be able to do all of those right here in this application, reuse my business logic for whatever I want. If I wanted to do WPF or Win UI 3, I can reuse all of my core logic and just let the UI framework code be the UI framework code. Again, we just said a separate assembly for stuff we want to keep away from our application. Our application isn't coupled to a presentation framework. So let's not make it coupled to a presentation framework if we don't have to. Anyway, that said, that's the reason why I actually have a separate assembly that's not just all in the UI project. Otherwise, there's nothing stopping me. So I wrote tests. I wrote README. README says that I want to do things with stuff. What does the README say? What does the README say? The README says that. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh, oh, that just puts it. Ah, I see. Womp womp. You think you know how to use a tool after using it for 8 years? Um, okay, add medicine. Look up medicine by name. So we are gonna have to have some type of search functionality, which we haven't added yet. So we can add that here shortly. Um, and I think I've provided a way to get all of those values off of the medications that are available. So let's go look at the medication real quick. What a medication has, right? So a medication is going to, yeah, that's, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. All right, so a medication based on this, split and move right. All right, so based on this, a medication is going to have a set of dosages. It's going to have a single, what did we use? Did we use a specific term for this? Dosage weight, dosage type, meal requirement, medication reminder, recurrence. I'm just looking to see whether or not I was smart enough to come up with something for this. Okay. So a medication that would be read-only data would have some, I'm going to have to find a different word for this, but for the moment we're just going to use it. So this would have like some public type, right? Because we're going to keep it simple until we have to make it ingestion get. We will create. No, we don't want to create an interface. We want to create an enum ingestion type. Yep, we know. We're going to make this. You know what? I think I have something. Let me go look. What are the tablet? Ah, okay, it is. Oh, I called it dosage type. Ah, okay. Womp, 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 womp. I already solved for that. Yay! I'm so good at this. Okay, so that means that we have a capsule, tablet, injection, topical, inhalant. I think is the last one we didn't do. Okay, so we'll do inhalant. Inhalant. Let's see if I learned anything today. I did. I learned how to spell inhalant. Yay! All right, so a given dosage is going to have a type, a quantity, and a weight. So remember we talked about earlier, right? Like here, I'm perfectly fine with because it's the context of a dosage quantity that can be a uint, right? But if I was creating a thing called a quantity, I might want to have an actual quantity that I was passing around as a fully qualified type. But because the dosage, I'm sorry, because the quantity is specific to the dosage, I don't think I care. Yeah, and it has a weight as well. So right now we're gonna do milligrams and grams. All right. So we need to no, there is no inherent documentation. We want to initialize these things from the constructor. Oh, there should be a way to do all of them, right? Thought there was a smart way to do that. Okay, I guess not. We'll just do each one. Initialize, and I'm sure my friends that work at JetBrains would look at this and be mad at me like, Rodney, you should know how to do this. You've been using this tool forever. Yeah, I should. You're right. Problem is they make changes, and I don't stay up on all the changes because I'm not a good. No, I'm not good at this anymore. The type. The what is okay the amount to take. But yeah, maybe like dosage would be better as like a, a, a thing that encapsulate all those. But like I said, for right now, this is the wrapper that I have to create around these three concepts in order to make them valuable. And a simple enum is simple enough for me right now. I don't need to get into complex, ridiculous stuff for the sake of doing technical stuff. Because the whole point of this is right, like, just deliver value, get stuff done, and when things need to be more complicated, you make them more complicated, right? Like when they need to express, and I'd say you make them more complicated because you want to, right? But when you need to describe or express the complexity in a way that isn't currently sufficient and you need something more, then you do the something more. You don't start with the something more until the thing tells you it needs it, right? Just like you don't just go feeding a dog just because you think you're supposed to feed it and you just feed it food all day long, right? Like you feed it, the dog will tell you when he's hungry and when he's not. Like they'll tell you. So the objects tell us what they need in terms of the expression of their complexity, and we just got to listen to them. The weight. Dosage. There we go. All right, so that's fine. I don't really feel like doing this right now. I'm gonna do it anyway because gets the type, gets the quantity, gets the weight. And I know a lot of people will be like, well, Rodney, why don't you just use object initializers? Like, well, I'm very big, like, because I live in an MVVM world where things change based upon mutations, I'm very big on immutability these days. Like, things that don't need to mutate, don't allow them to mutate. You're the developer, You have the control over it. So just because the auto prop gives me a get set doesn't mean that I have to use that set, right? Like I'm the developer. I'm supposed to be smart enough to know what my domain requires and what my objects need to be, and I'm responsible for making them what they need to be. So if it doesn't need to mutate publicly, why would I give it a public mutation option? I know this is like kind of like old school Java where you have to define the getter and the setter. Now all you have to do is just not use a simple three letter and an exclamation point, or not exclamation point, sorry, a semicolon. I've got nullability on the brain. I've been doing a lot of nullability stuff recently, and I got my arm twisted into. I don't know. I didn't get my arm twisted. I opened my mouth on the public internet and was about to rant about C sharp nullability, and somebody was like, "Hey, I'd love to read what you have to say." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Maybe I should, maybe I should make that happen." So that's what I'm working on later this afternoon after I get off with you folks. Oh, hey, One Killer, I am working on an app for a talk that I'm giving around behavior driven design and development. And I've picked a sample domain of um, of of being able to track medications that I've taken because my father is getting older and he's starting to have to take more medications. And I was hanging out with him about a month or so ago, and his timer went off, and he says, "I can't remember if I took this medication or not." And I'm like, "That's a problem. Like, you have all these timers set up, but you don't actually track when you took it." And he said, "No." So I figured because I needed a sample domain for a talk, I would build something that solves the problem, just for the fun of it. So okay, so yeah, so that's the dosage. So now we have this medication that has a an ingestion type. So it doesn't actually need any of that because it has all the dosages. So I can get the dosage. I can get all that information of ingestion and dosage. So I guess that's all part of dosage. So I guess I need to just do this. Dosage is going to be the weight, the amount. I think I'm going to change that quantity to an amount just because amount feels better when I say it now that I think about it. Let's do this. The amount. Yes, it is a Maui app. Because it's a .NET conference, I'm doing a Maui app. I thought about doing Avalonia or Uno, but I didn't want to. If the way I've got it set up, I can add a Uno target or an Avalonia target. So I'm building it in such a way that allows me to do that. But for the sake of my own brain and not having to learn something new just for the sake of this talk, I figured I'd go with what I'm comfortable with. Yeah. Okay. So this looks good enough to me. So I've identified and described all of those things. So now I have a concept of a medication. So this, let me get rid of some stuff, and can I open in opposite group, and then take that off, and then I guess I have to pin it again. Pin tab. Okay. So oh yeah, these are the tests. So at this point, I've got a medication that I'm gonna get rid of this because I don't need it. So I've got a medication. Medication takes a medication ID. It takes in the set of dosages, and so the way I'm looking at this is like this is would be like read only data, right? So I go to some API, I get a list of medication, I pull those medication back in, and then I have the ability to say this like I like 100 milligrams of ibuprofen twice a day, 100 300 milligrams of ibuprofen or acetaminophen, once a day, those types of things. So I expect to see back a medication with a unique identifier of some kind and a list of the dosages that are publicly available to consumers, or maybe even if I can actually get access. And if and later on, what I'll end up doing is if your medication isn't available, like you don't see it in the list, I'll let you add it. That's down the road. So then that becomes this is not master data. This then becomes mutable data. I probably have a completely different object for that, most likely. or probably not. Depends on what the system tells me it wants. Okay, so at this point, I've already written some unit tests and I've already kind of laid out what this thing looks like. So I'll go to the view model real quick and just kind of walk around for the sake of what we got going on here. So I'm trying to keep my view models thin. So I talked about this earlier, and I engage in a lot of conversations on the internets with other developers and developer advocates and architects all around, like, hey, what are we really doing here? And hey, maybe we should stop creating so much extra crap for people to have to maintain, right? So I've seen view models, and I'm actually going to create this now because we're talking about it, right? Like I've seen like a add medicine view model. I could do this as a partial. No, I don't want to do it as a partial class. I want to do it as a completely separate class. Dot cluttered, right? Yeah, that's what I want to do. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to take this add view model cluttered, right? Yeah, there we go. That's fine. And I want to point out that, like, in this world, so in this world, I have just my navigation service because I'm doing view model navigation. So I'll inject the same thing here. We're going to talk about each one of these things that we inject briefly. All right, so I'm going to have my navigation service. That's fine. Here I'm using a mediator. So these are my own interfaces. Part of the talk is to explain that a healthy system defines its own seams. So I know we talk a lot in those circles about, hey, interfaces are bad and you shouldn't abstract things and having all the interfaces is the devil. Like, I get it. I really do. But I'll say this. I've been writing applications for 20 years. Has it been that long? Yeah. Okay. I've been writing applications for 20 years. And what I've learned is this. Every single time that I have taken a dependency on a third party and I have not properly segregated it from my code, I've regretted it later. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that I start with, hey, let's immediately abstract things? Certain things, yes. Everything, no. Sometimes it'll be like if there's two places in the code base, two places with today's refactoring tools is not that big a deal. Two places with, 1980 refactoring tools, that's a big deal. Huge problem. So in today's world, I don't really care, right? Like it's just, I know that at a certain point things will become unmaintainable. So because I have good refactoring practices, once I see this dependency getting to a point of critical mass, I'll abstract it. Now, specifically in this instance, I know I'm going to want to use a third-party mediator implementation because I don't want to write my own specifically for this application. I'm actually probably going to use Alan Ritchie's new Shiny mediator stuff, but I want to own the interfaces, right? Like that's the main thing. I want to own the interfaces. I want to own what gets called, how it gets called, because if I don't own them, when I go to abstract it later, it's going to be more difficult, right? Imagine if I've got, let's just say, let's average, so 100 screens in an app, right? Like if I have 100 screens in an app, that means I have 100 view models in the app, and I don't want to go through and change out his implementation to my implementation later, right? So like I want to own that seam because now I can unplug his mediator implementation, put in Jimmy Bogart's or the short bus or another one that I've seen that I can't think of the name of off the top of my head, but it's done based upon source generation. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. I feel bad that I can't remember it, but I've been looking at that. I've also looked at Wolverine, although I don't think Wolverine will work as well in this space, specifically because I think it's more geared towards web, but the concept is the same, right? I don't know what implementation I'm going to need. I don't know what my actual requirements are at this point. So because I'm being a good steward, I'm just going to say, hey, I know the requirements are at minimum going to be to send some commands, execute some queries, maybe publish some notifications. So I'll cover those things and I'll make sure that I have seams in my application for them. So that means that now all I have to do is inject my interface, and then whatever the implementation is all a dependency inversion problem from Solid, right? Like now it's not a problem for my code as it exists right now. Now it's a dependency inversion problem. Whatever dependency I invert to make sure that this thing has a concrete implementation, it's that thing's problem. And I can continue to go work on my view model. And that means that if this implementation isn't ready, let's say we're starting this greenfield and we haven't actually done this, that means somebody can go implement this piece while I'm implementing the add medicine view model logic, right? Because I have a seam. I could still do that with somebody else's interface, but then I'm explicitly coupled my entire application to them, which in certain instances, not a big deal. There's certain things that I will take a hard dependency on, right? Like case in point, I'm taking a hard dependency on stateless. I'm not going to abstract all of stateless's stuff just to be able to say I abstracted stateless away from my application. No, unfortunately, for better or worse, stateless is one of those dependencies where I'm just like, you know what? It goes in. I'm not writing an interface to try and separate it. If I have to come back behind and remove a state machine, I'll go ahead and show you, right? That means that I would have to come back and figure all this out anyway. Now, could I write abstractions to do all this? Yes. But this is one method in a sea of code, right? Specific. So now if I want to bring in, I don't know, stateful, which isn't a library, but like let's just say that it was a competitor to stateless, I could do it one view model at a time and change them out. So I'm not too concerned about things like that. But the mediator implementations, I am, right? Because now I can't test my view model as well, or I'll have to rewrite a whole bunch of tests. Whereas here, I shouldn't have to really rewrite any tests because I'm not testing the state machine configuration, this private method. Again, a lot of people think that unit testing is about testing every single method in this thing. I'm not testing this private method, even though it tells me I have tests, right? I'm not testing that. I'm verifying that whatever state I expect to be there is there. That's what I'm actually testing, right? Like these things are testing that it's in the correct state, right? Like, hey, the current state is this or the current state is that. And these are all things that I own, not owned by stateless. So it won't really trip me up. Anyway, so getting back to the point, right? I have this CQRS and I know I'm going to need this logger factory. So we're going to take this real quick. Take this. Yep, take that. And we'll resolve that one and we'll resolve that one. So now let's just go real quickly, look at what these queries and commands take, right? So like my load medication takes, the query handler takes a iMedicine client, right? So that means that my cluttered view model will now have to take an iMedicine client. And then my only other command that I have right now is this command. So this is relatively light and it takes in this iReminders interface. So now that means that I would have to do this iReminders interface as well. So I'll go ahead and just do, no, I don't want to do that. That's not the business. That's the business though, right there. Boom. And then I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to call this reminders, right? Okay, perfect. So now what this means is I have to take in all of these things. So now when the next requirement comes down the pipeline, I got to say, I need this interface and I need that interface. Like I made to add, and every single thing that I add just becomes more clutter in this view model, right? Because now this view model isn't just responsible for what a view model is supposed to be responsible for. What's a view model supposed to be responsible for? Well, a view model is supposed to be responsible for taking input from the view and calling methods in the domain, right? Interacting with the domain. It is supposed to be a thin pass-through. I recently had to explain MVVM to somebody who was an ASP.NET developer, and the way I got it across to them was by explaining to them, hey, a view model is really nothing more than a view controller, right? Just like you would have just like the view controller is technically headless, right? The controller is headless, and you can technically be a web API controller, and you can send an HTTP request in, right? The view, the MAUI view, the XAML view does some command that converts directly to the view model, and the view model should then convert that directly to something, right? It shouldn't do a whole bunch of glued in code right here. I've also seen things like I have like repositories in this thing all over the place. That's interesting. I've not seen that interface. Look, tangent. Oh, I see. Yep. Okay, that's cool. More refit stuff. So at this point, every time I add something, and so I'll go ahead and take another step back, and I'm actually going to do this again real quick, and I'm going to do it right here and here. Right. I'm also going to do this from a clean architecture. Right. I'm going to call this clean. Right. Because clean architecture is the thing in Flutter. And I actually was in Flutter playing with clean architecture because, I'm very much the type, hey, when I'm in Rome, I'm going to do what the Romans do because I want to see what the hype is. Well, everybody in Flutter is doing, not everybody, but a lot of people in Flutter are doing the whole clean architecture bit. Well, what does the clean architecture bit do? Well, it defines these use cases, right? So you'll have a let's just do we have a I get stuff use case, right? But you run into the same problem, right? Where the let me just do this. I get stuff use case, right? So you end up with the same underlying problem, right? Whereby I'm gonna make this internal because I don't. Oh, yeah, you can't do that, Rodney, because it's a public. Um, that needs to be interface. No, not internal. Interface. There we go. So you end up adding a new use case in for everything you do into your what they call a block, right? That's their concept of a state machine. So I don't like that very much either because that means that every time I add a feature to this view model, I have to modify the view model, right? Solid principles teach us, open close principle teaches us things should be open to extension, closed to modification. So in this world, in order to, yeah, no, that's right. In order to extend the functionality of the add medicine view model, I have to modify the code, right? In the way that I have it set up with this mediator, I don't need to do any of that. What do I need to do if I need more information than just the medication, right? Let's say I need to go get healthcare providers, for example, right? Load healthcare providers, right? And now when I'm ready to do it, I'll have a query that does something very similar to this, right? Where I go grab all this. I'm gonna go back to my load healthcare providers. I'm gonna paste all this in here, and we're not gonna actually go through the exercise right now, but to the point, folder. To the point, now I have another query and another query handler that I can use in my view model by doing, this needs to be static, right? By doing nothing more than going, let's go to my add medicine and let's go to my initialize function. We can do this. We're good at this. I promise. All right. And now if I need to also go load healthcare providers, right? I can just do this, right? So now I'm no longer forcing my method, or sorry, not my method signature, my constructor signature to change every single time I want to add new functionality, right? Anytime I want to add new behaviors to this view model, I don't want to modify everything about the view model. I want to try and keep that as lean as possible. So I didn't really care for the use case approach because like the use case approach would do this, right? So basically what you would end up doing is dot query handler, and we'll do it this way to make it actually make sense, right? Import. So this is what it would actually look like. So if I was to go look and see, but so this is the downside, right? And this is where some teams and some developers will have a disconnect because there's not a clear line, right? Because there's more of like an inference, right? Like we've got to do some quantum tunneling in order to be able to get from the mediator to the thing. They don't like it. They don't like it because they want to see that this dependency is injected and this dependency is called. That's fine. I mean, I can still prove it to you. And if you need the training wheels, that's fine. Like I'm not tripping. I get it. I needed training wheels it took me a very long time to get comfortable with these things and to actually look at them and say, oh, this is actually a decent way to do this. Healthcare. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. So that would be that, and then we would have a load medication, and this would be I'm trying to do everything in alphabetical order. And then we would have a one more, and that would be the add medication to schedule, and that would be a command, right? So even if I did it the clean architecture way, right? Add medication, right? Even if I did the clean architecture way, I still have to modify this this view model constructor every single time I want to pass in something new. And I'm just kind of over that space in my world, because it just becomes like, I've seen view models that legitimately take in 30 dependencies. And the question just becomes like, why haven't we refactored that away? Why haven't we made the complexity of the view model as small as possible and allowed the complexity of the domain to be properly described? Instead, what ends up happening is we start calling all of these things, all of these independent pieces in our view model, and the view model becomes glue. I'm actually, you know what? That's exactly what I'm going to call this. I'm going to call this glue. Applied name refactoring, because we glue stuff together, right? Like I call out to the API client, and then I add it to some cache, and I do all the stuff directly in the view model, and the view model becomes this huge god class that really all it was supposed to do was take things from the view and call methods on the domain. It's all it was supposed to do. But we couldn't handle that. We have to see all these things get injected. We've got to see the clear line between A and B, and we've got to do all this stuff in the view model because that's where it's supposed to be done. And it's just like, no. We can describe complexity better than this. I promise you we can. So it gives you there, let me pin this one. Come on, right click, pin tab. There we go. So it kind of gives you an understanding of what the world looks like, and why I'm kind of putting this talk together, because I want people to understand that you don't have to constantly push this square peg into this round hole, right? It doesn't have to be that way. I know people prefer it that way sometimes, but I don't. I like to keep my work area as clean as possible. I say that as my desk is like a literal mess right now. Shh, don't tell anybody. But I had a keyboard key break earlier this week, so I had to take my keyboard up and fix the keyboard key and do all that fun stuff. And in the process, I decided to, because I have a backup keyboard. The key on the backup keyboard is what broke, so I put my actual keyboard back into play. And my desk just got messy after that, so I'll clean that up later. But anyway, enough about my messy desk. No one cares, and you guys aren't here to hear about my personal living habits. You care about this code. So what this allows me to do is to describe the view model. I've got 200 lines of code currently in my view model. What is that? 10-ish lines of that code is private properties. I've got a single method that allows me to define my state machine. So that defines the entire way that it defines the states and transitions that I can do in this view model. I've got an initialize method, which I'm leaving this here for the talk, for the sake of the talk, to clean it, but I'm going to clean this up as part of the talk. And this will just return the things that are required directly on the result, i.e., instead of getting a list of medicines and having to rip the dosages out, the result is going to return everything that I require. I just haven't done it yet. So I'm going to put it to do right now, and I'm going to say to do, right? Because that's what I do. To do. There we go. Move that stuff to the query handler. And as you can see, I'm firing state machine triggers to do stuff. I probably am not being as explicit in my expression of my state machine as I possibly could, i.e., I'm reusing a trigger to denote the beginning and the end of a process. Maybe this should be begin load, maybe this should be end load. I don't know. But stateless allows me to define it and describe it, and I've been able to permit my state machine to work the way I want it to work, so I don't really care. When the load trigger comes in and we're in the busy state, it goes to loaded, right? So I use the load to go to busy, and I use the load to leave busy. There's no rule that says you can't reuse triggers, but sometimes we like to be very, very expressive and very, very particular. I'm not being that dogmatic in this talk because I don't want to get too far into the weeds. But again, I'm still expressing the complexity in a way that makes sense, and I think that that's fine. Yeah, I'm gonna come back to those. I don't need this load healthcare providers. I think I'm gonna leave it there for the moment, though. This is my state machine. So the one bit of abstraction I did do, I have a concept of an observable state machine on top of the state machine. So this is stateless right here, and I've just got an observable state machine. Now I know that stateless provides me a current state object. I do not believe, and I haven't looked, so this is just me being extra. I don't believe that it actually responds to property change notifications. So all I'm doing is making it so that a view model can uh, change, and it can pay attention to the actual change from a property change notification perspective. And then there's this state machine. So I'm explicitly defining this state machine as this type, so I don't have to do everything from this generic perspective. Um, it's kind of a six in one hand, half a dozen in the other. You can do it however you want. But I also have the states and the transitions internal to the class, to the state machine class itself, for a reason. Um, there we go. Last bit of coffee down the hatch. Um, I also do something to grab the unhandled triggers, and this is just me transitioning that it's been complete. Um, so all of this is something that I get access to for free. You'll also notice, and this is something that I'm going to bring up because I have had this conversation so I've been working on a particular project now for about 5 years, and one of the people that I work with on that project is one of the smartest developers I've ever worked with, and he posed a question to me some years ago that I didn't fully appreciate, and he says, Rodney, he says, why do I have to inject an interface when I can just inject the thing, right? So I could create a I state machine factory, and I could pass in an I state machine factory and then use that factory's create method to do stuff. I could. Why? Right? So the container that I'm using for this is dry IOC. As you saw on the list of things, I'm using dry IOC and Prism and reactive UI and reactive marbles, right? So um, I'm using dry IOC. Dry IOC has the ability to resolve a factory method for me. So all I have to do is, and I'm going to show it to you, cannot find declaration to go to. Okay, we're doing good. We're doing fantastic. So let's go to the UI head where we're doing all the registrations. Oh, here we go. I can look. I can read. And in here, we'll go to our features folder. We'll go to medicine where we're pulling it, and we'll go to the medication module. Um, Here, all I have to do is register my or my add medicine state machine, and the container will resolve this as the factory method. So all I have to do is take the factory method and invoke it, and that way I can explain because I have created some of observability for this thing, and it has resources that it's supposed to be responsible for disposing. I can either let the container that constructs this view model be responsible for tearing down everything, or I can tear down the things that I know I'm supposed to. I'm explicitly just taking over disposal here, as well as invoking the factory. So I create my add medicine view model, and I'm going to make sure that it gets disposed with the view model itself. There's container magic that I can do to do that. I'm explicitly not doing that here because I want to point out that you can do this, and that some people, including myself, a couple years ago, I didn't realize that some of the nuances behind that and what that meant. But when it comes to applications these days, I'm very much trying to take control of garbage collection because I've written some applications recently on some frameworks that will not be named that have had some really interesting memory footprints. And if you know anything about iOS development, you know that iOS will kill anything that it doesn't like. Oh, sorry. I'm over here just running my mouth. Are my views XAML based or C sharp? I'm using XAML, and I'll tell you why I use XAML these days. I use XAML these days because everybody prefers XAML, and the UI isn't really the interesting part of the talk. So I want that to be easy for people when they go pull the code sample, and not have a problem. But to your point, because my UI is separate from my application, there's less of a chance that I will accidentally leak business logic into my UI code if I did C sharp based UI. Some of it I might do C sharp based. You know what? That's actually a good point. I didn't think about that. I just started doing XAML because XAML is what they give you as part of the thing, and I've been doing a lot of XAML at my day job. So I didn't think about it, but I might do C sharp UI. We'll see. We'll see. I might. Because I actually want to play with some of the some of the UI extensions for Maui. I was using them heavily in the Xamarin world at the end of Xamarin's life cycle, so I might want to play with them now and see how that works. But yeah, my view model is just three injections, right? How to get to the next place, how to access my domain, and how to log stuff, and the state machine. Now, here's the other interesting part. You'll notice that the state machine only has a logger factory. So I could have just done this, right? I could have very easily just done this, and there's really nothing wrong with it. And just passed in this logger factory and been done with it. I could have done that. Um, eh. At this point, I just eh. This feels better to me because now this is a dependency that I like. If later on I need this state machine to grow independently, I don't have to worry about it being explicitly coupled to the view model in that manner. Now, it's still tightly coupled to the view model. Don't get me wrong, right? Like I'm not going to say that it's not tightly coupled, right? Like I'm creating it. It's specific to the view model. It really should just be the view model, but I'm not there yet. So now at this point, like my state machines live inside my view models, but they're tightly coupled. What I don't want to do is tightly couple what this thing can do directly to the view model. Like let's say that I need it to, let's say that for whatever reason, this is probably a bad example, but I want to use this publisher to publish notifications, right? Let's say I want to do something along those lines, right? Where I want this publisher to be able to publish notifications every time we have like a comment on entry, right? And I can do an override on, nope, that's not how I would do it then, is it? Yeah, I would just have to define it, right? Like I'd have to define like a public on common entry. And this is a bad example, but I'm going to use it anyway. Void common entry, right? So if I have a common entry, now I can say, hey underscore publisher dot publish the fact that I entered a specific state, right? Like I could do that. But if I did that currently, I would then have to, every time I modify this, now I'd be coupled at the construction, right? Every time I modify this thing's construction, this thing would have to now take in a new dependency. And I just said I don't want this thing to have to care about taking in new dependencies. So instead of allowing this thing to be newed up, right, and now I have to send in this and send in, I'm not doing all that, right? Like I'm just going to let this thing get resolved from the container with whatever it has and allow this to grow independently enough to where it gets the job done, right? No big deal here. Oh, what are we doing? What did I break? Oh, there you go. That's why. It's broken. Perfect. Yeah, don't want that either. So I take in the state machine. The state machine gets tested. I can test all of these other things. the trigger validation that I'm doing, I actually need to change the way that this is done. What was I thinking? I was thinking I know what I'm doing, but I don't. Um, I just have so at this point, the only thing my view model is responsible for. So going back to the README that we started at the beginning, right? If I set this, can we do this? Yeah, we can. Can we split and move right? There we go. Yeah, here we go. So structure, nope. Here we go. Here's methods. So I need my to be able to look up a medication by name. So my initialization of my view model will force the uh, the CQRS pattern to go query and go load medication. So it'll get all the medication and it'll return it and it'll tell the state machine that it's loaded. Right from there, I can start to modify things on the page. Right, so you'll notice my view model actually has a place for the selected dosage and the selected name, which this will probably change slightly. And the selected recurrence and the selected time, right? So now again, we talked about it. These recurrences, actually, we need to change the way that this recurrence works because a given recurrence will require a given time. So now we've described all the complexity of this concern in 200 lines of code, and I've got 12 tests. Is that right? No, that's domain 2. So I've got 8 tests that test behaviors, right? Given that the CQRS is there when it's initialized, it should be in the loaded state, right? So that means that the view model itself should be loaded. So now here's the interesting part. We'll go through this and then we'll go to the interesting part. And we'll get to probably that today about how I'm going to do this on the UI because I don't know yet. So we're going to figure that out probably together. But I have tests for all of the things that it should have, right? So I'm not testing, nowhere in here am I testing that the CQRS interface was called. I am trying not to create brittle tests, right? Because I want to test behaviors. Behaviors are such that I have a thing that I do and I get something back, right? Like, or I have a thing that I do and I get a completion back, right? So I'm not testing that the interface was called. I'm not testing the internals of the view model. I'm simply saying that when I initialize the view model, at the end of this initialization, given the fact that I've mocked everything out, I should have some dosages, right? I should have some things available. And this is the interesting part, right? So when we talk about the state machine and it being in specific states, right? Like it should be in the loaded state. Like right now, it's in the loaded state. And I'm able to, let me do this real quick, import static usings across the file, dosage. Oh, haha. We'll get that. We'll get to that in a second. Because I'm gonna have to create a dosage fixture entities. Let's just do that real quick. Class dosage fixture. Let me do this real quick. Yeah, so I keep getting sidetracked because this is how actual software gets written, right? No, not a with. I need a fixture. Fixture. There we go. So it's going to be dosage fixture, and I'll let that be the iTest fixture builder for now. Yeah. There we go. And then I can just make that this thing's problem. So I can do new. No, dosage type dot chewable because I'm a big kid. Let's give it the amount would be 2. And the dosage weight here, let's just call it milligrams, right? So let's call that, it's going to be a chewable. It's going to be, let's call it a 100 milligram chewable, right? There we go. So that's the default for a dosage. So now I go back over here. So, all right. So now most of my red squigglies are gone. I'm just trying to make sure. Let me just run the build real quick, verify that it builds. And while it builds, I'll talk about the interesting part. So now the reason why I'm trying this and I'm explicitly pushing this is because one of the things that I noticed in Flutter is that when you do, come on, you can load the UI. Oh, no, you can't. Oh, the file may only contain one type. So clearly you're not going to allow me to do the thing. So let's do this. Let's move in files. So I should get 2 files now. This file should get renamed. There we go. Perfect. All right, so now let me run the build again and verify that it's going to work. And let's go back to the UI. And that's the tests. Failed again. Oh, yeah, that's the new query that I created that I didn't add documentation to. Ugh. Anyway, there we go. Now my XAML's loaded. So what I'm trying to do is this. I'm trying to bridge the user interface with the state machine. So that means that I'm going to have some level of either I'm going to have some level of converter, right? So let's see, add medicine state converter, right? Either I'm going to have some value converter that converts UI state to, because I can type. There we go. Either I have some iValue converter that I convert the incoming type based upon the. Oh, let me start. Yeah, we're gonna pin some tabs and we're gonna remove some stuff. This is what I want. I need this to be pinned as well, and then I'm gonna close. All but pinned. There we go. Perfect. So I want certain UI elements to be either visible or not visible, all depending upon the view model state, right? So in the MVU world, it specifically in the Flutter world, you would use this concept to render UI based upon the state that is determined from your block or your state machine, right? So what I want to do is I want to use this state machine and these states, and I'm actually going to grab this real quick. We're going to go back over to this converter thing, and we're going to start there, right? Like I want to be able to say, hey, based upon this state, do certain things. And I may need multiple converters, right? Like and this is where I say, like, I don't know if it's data triggers. I don't know if it's converters. I don't know if I need like a certain set of converters, like, hey, this is the loaded state converter, and this is the, like, I don't know what the right answer is here just yet. So I'm working on that. But my thought is I should be able to do some like return switch value as, oh, I, you know what, we're gonna, this is where it's like I need an adult when I start doing switch expressions. So let's, instead of that, let's just do it the old fashioned way, right? Like, so let's do a switch and let's say expression of value, right? And we'll say, well, first we want to say if value it is not return null. Value yes, let's do this. If value as, so I'm still like that. So state okay, so let's try this. Let's say var state equals as operator must be a reference type. That's another reason to make those reference types as opposed to value types. State. If state, if it's not state, return null. And then we're going to switch the value and we're going to say case state dot initial. Then so again, in the Flutter world, what I would do is I would actually render UI here. So I think here what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to return true, for an example. Space is redundant after the colon. Okay. Yeah, so I don't know exactly how this is going to work just yet, but let's start looking at when it's initial. So we're going to have a content page and we're going to have some, let's start with a stack layout to make my life easy. Isn't stack layout? Okay, stack layout is not. But so if I did a vertical stack layout, right, that should inherit stack layout. Inherit stack base. So they all inherit stack base. So I don't know now what the difference. Okay, whatever. So we have a stack layout, and in that stack layout, let's say we'll have a label, and inside that label we will have, let's actually see if we can do it this way, a text, and the text should say something along the lines of choose a medication, right? So we choose a medication. We will have some inside our stack layout. After that, we will have some probably drop down list. They call it a picker. Picker. Items. All right, so we'll have a picker, and that'll be the picker that we use to. Oh, okay. So we can do the is visible, and we can say static. Should be initial. Yes, that's what. Okay, so let's think about that, right? So like, the picker is going to be visible anytime we're in either the initial state, the busy state, or the loaded state, right? Yeah. But if we're in the failure state, it's not going to be visible. So I think we can just do. So for now, we'll keep it simple. We'll just do add, because again, this is about medicine. Add medicine state. I did it again. No, we want in the application. Let's go here. Oh, I don't think we want to do that. Yeah, let's go back and let's add this to the stack layout, and that's not going to be a boolean. That's going to be the key. Give me a second. I haven't done a converter in quite some time. I got to make sure I get the syntax right. Ooh. Similar to frame and border. Stack layout will be deprecated soon. That's what I thought. Move to vertical or horizontal stack layout. So yeah, frame and wait, border's going away? I thought frame was going away, but border was staying. Oh no. Yeah, you can tell I don't do as much UI as I used to do. I've been doing a lot of high level back end on mobile, right? Stuff. Yeah, that's what I thought. Border is supposed to replace frame. That's what I thought. Okay, so you we're on the same page. I'm like, man, because so stack layout is deprecated. There's other stuff that's deprecated, and like I just realized the application.main page is deprecated, and I'm like, oh, it's all gonna change. It's all gonna change. Let me go converters. Oh, I'm smart. Okay, I can do it that way. That's fine. That doesn't bother me none. Yeah, so I just want to do this, and I want this type to be that, and it's not going to be a system type. That's going to be, there we go. Oh, that's weird, but I'll take it. Oh, it's probably going to tell me that it can't be the same. Expected it to be bool, but the womp 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 womp. Oh, have not been doing Maui UI a lot recently. So what is that? Okay, yep, I get that. I get that. Come on. Come on. You can do it. It still takes forever for these things to load. Oh, okay. It's an actual converter on the binding. So it's not a. There we go. Is visible. So I would have to do is visible. Wouldn't be in the converter. It's going to be this. It's going to be converter. Oh, wait. No, sorry. I have to do this and then I do converter. Yep. Yep. Nope, 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 nope. Not doing this right. Oh, wow, it's been a while. Let's go look in the UI project. Yeah, there we go. So that's going to be, yeah, there we go. There's an example. It is exactly how I thought it was. My brain just doesn't seem to want to work correctly. Okay, so this is correct. Oh, dun dun dun. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? There we go. Now my brain is working. Wow. Wow. It's been a while since I've done like hardcore XAML. Gotta love it. All right, so that would be the picker, and whether or not it's visible is going to be determined based upon whether or not this thing returns valid values, right? So let's go back here, and now we can say if it's initial, and then the only time we want this thing to be failed, we want to return false, right? Yikes, not a fact in the middle of our. All right, so now this is going to say, let's convert this to switch expression, which is what I wanted to do in the first place. You're now going to yell because my spacing is off, but you know what? I'm going to have to figure out a way to make it so that it doesn't check these things for the method. Justification is going to be switch expression. There we go. So now you won't yell at me about that. It's got a discard parameter. It wants me to use the explicit var. Okay, I can do that. That's fine. Life is good. So now import static members. All right, so and then there we go. Okay, we're good. So if it's initial, or if it's busy, or if it's loaded, we're going to return true. I have a feeling we're going to come back and regret that later, but that's fine. I'll regret it later. Yikes. Reorder the using statements. All right, so here we are. So if we go back to the screen, now this is going to be visible when the state converter says it should be visible, right? That would be weird. Yeah, I already see where that's going to cause a problem, but I'll keep going. So we'll have a picker, and then after the picker, We're probably gonna have a couple of pickers. So I think the first we're gonna do X name equals. Let's just call this. So we're gonna have a picker for medications. We're gonna have a picker for the dosages. We're gonna have a picker for the reoccurrence, but that's gonna be weird. I don't actually think we can do a picker for the reoccurrence. We're gonna have to allow them to select like a radio button style. So we're gonna do like a radio button. Let's do radio button, and we're gonna call that. What is that radio button? Is going to be the dosage. Oh, sorry, the reoccurrence. All right, so that's going to be the recurrence, not the reoccurrence, the recurrence. And then after that, you're going to put in a entry. It's going to be an entry, and this is going to be the amount. No, because that's part of the dosage. Sorry, this is going to be a time, and we're gonna. Can I give this a type? I can give this a type. I used to be able to give it a type. Like an entry type is enabled, is password. Okay, so now here's the return command, return type, style ID, text color, text transform. None of that matters. Okay. Okay. Yeah, none of that is text prediction enabled. You know what? I think I could do like a date picker. Yeah, and I think yeah, okay, I can do a date picker, and then this should be it should be like a not a format. Like it's the date time. There's a way to set this to a specific type. I just don't remember it off the top of my head. Character spacing. But I can set it to like desired size. Nope. Disable layout. Flow direction. It lets you pick the date time. The date. But I don't think it's going to be a date. I think I actually need like a time picker. Ha! There we go. Well. I should know these things. So the time picker. All right, so we have the things that we want. We'll set the visibility on all of them to be the same because we don't want to display them if the thing is broken. So now we're going to see how well we actually know how to do things. We're going to see if we can get this to compile. I'm probably going to brick it here shortly, but we'll see. Yep, there we go. That's what I expected. Oh, yeah, it's this thing still. This thing that we don't even care about. So let's just delete that. And then that means that that's deleted. So that means that our clean view model is going to be changed. And then our add medicine view model is going to have a dependency on it. There we go. Glue code doesn't care. All right, so I don't really care about the XML documentation just yet. I want to verify that this is going to work. Oh, I probably am going to have to change my Maui program so that it goes to the add medicine screen first. Dun, dun, dun. Where am I doing? Create window here. This is going to navigation, so I think... Okay. Well, that tells me that the... Is it going to do it? iOS 13 mini. You can do it. It's considering launching. There we go. So if I go here, Ooh, 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 ooh. It all blew up. Why did it blow up? Oh, because I don't have an implementation for CQRS. Stop. Yeah, let's do that. Let me go to, yeah, because I haven't actually done that part yet because I'm lazy. There's an inheritor. Oh, oh, I did create a dummy CQRS, and this is just going to, let's do this. Let's just return task dot from result default of t result result. What are you complaining about? Change query to, no, I'm not doing that just yet. This doesn't care, so I'll just return task dot completed task. Task dot completed task. And I'm pretty sure that my code's gonna blow up, but I don't care. We'll worry about that later because then that gets into the, hey, how are we going to implement the mediator? And I don't want to solve that problem today. I want to do other like business logic related concerns. Where is this used? Usages is all over the place, but more particularly, we're in the features module, and that needs the implementation of CQRS. So now if we run it again, our container won't explode, hopefully. Or it might, which would also be fun. All right. Okay, so it at least resolves it at this point. So it's got a main page, and that's just the main page. I haven't done anything with it yet. Okay, so now at least all of my container registrations are correct. All of my stuff and things. Let's do this. If result equals null, return. Yeah, I know. I already know. I already know you're gonna tell me it can't possibly be null. To do uh, remove me when CQRS has an implementation. All right, perfect. So there's that. Why are you complaining to do? Block statements should not contain embedded comments. That's what you're gonna tell me? That's what we're doing today? There we go. Now we're happy. So now this thing won't blow up. So if I go back to my Maui program, I change this to add medicine. Moment of truth. I'm fully expecting this to fall over and crash for the record. Because I'm not quite sure that I've registered all my dependencies. So we'll see. I think I did. I registered the state machine. I registered the view model with the view for navigation. So it should be registered and it should be okay. But we shall see. That's what I thought. Well, at least my global exception handling is working. Yay! Oh, wait, that's not my global exception handling. No head page has been registered with the provided key add medicine. Yes, it has. So that means that this module, you can do it. You can do it. Let me have it. Yep. Let me go to the Maui program where I am doing my registrations. And let me add. Oh, that's the UI module. So is that my is that what I'm doing? Yep, I guess that's what I'm doing. Okay, fine, whatever. All right. So now this should work because I'm actually registered. I didn't have the registration actually getting called by the container, so while I wrote it, it didn't actually work. Shh, don't tell nobody. I also need to figure out why my global exception handler isn't working. Perfect. So this is my medication screen. There we go. I got my date picker and I got my radio button and all of these other pieces on the screen. So now I can I'm at minimum. You know what? I'll do this. I will also, for the sake of testing, above this label, I will put another label and I will put a binding to current. Oh, because there's no X data type. Womp, 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 womp. X data type is going to be add medicine. Oh, because I keep doing that. I keep hitting the T instead of. There we go. Oh, I call it current state. Okay, current. All right, so now I can actually watch. So now, as I develop this thing and I watch my screen go through the different states that I have defined in my state machine, I can actually see what that state is on the UI. I might actually do like a stateful page just for development so that I can put that on every single page and every single page will know. And then when I need to yank it out, I can just change the inheritance and remove a property and be happy. I think that's how I'm going to do that. Yeah, okay. So it's in the initial state. It did not get through the busy state. Oh. So let's do this. Let's now, just to prove that the things that we've written up to this point work, let's go back to our view model. No, that's our converter. That's our view model. That's our view. This is our view model. Here we go. So we'll go back to our view model. And instead of just returning here, we are going to fire a failed. Nope. Failure. Failure. All right, so something failed. So here, if the results are null, we're gonna trigger a failure, and we're gonna verify that the UI gets the failure. And then after I verify this, I think I'm gonna call it for now. I'll probably keep working on this, but I doubt somebody wants to sit here with me all the rest of the afternoon while I do this. I think I've streamed enough and talked enough for today. Oh, it's still in initial state. Okay, now we're going to hit the debugger. Restart debugging. Stop and rerun. Yep, that's exactly what we want to do because now I want to see what is exactly happening. Oh, I know what it is. I don't have anything. I'm smart. I am so smart. That means that means the initial needs a. It's like, why is this not working? No, just stop. I know you're not going to work. I think that's the biggest issue that I have with the debugger is like usually I'll just rerun it again and in the middle of rerunning it I realize, oh wait, no, I'm still not right. Okay, and then this will go to failed. Failure and failed. So if I'm in the initial state and the failed trigger comes in, then I go to the failed state. All right, so let's rerun this. And now we should see it actually go to the failed state. And we should see that represented on the UI. And then we can do like colors or some type of toast message or whatever. Ooh, that's gonna be the the spice that we add to it before the end of the day. And I think that's where I'll stop. Is I'm gonna actually put. Oh, I need to send this. I need to do this today. Still in initial, huh? I did debug, right? Is initial not? Oh, this isn't even getting called. I'm not. Okay. I think I know how to. I think. Oh. Wait. No, this should be getting called. The state machine should be going into the initial. Oh, I see. I see how this works. This actually isn't going to work. Okay, that's fine. So that means that I'm going to have to call this command that I have wired up, which is the initialize command. So what does that mean? Okay, so that means that from my view, and I'm about to do something that is probably that I'm going to change later, but for the moment it's fine. I'm going to have this thing implement I initialize async. I'm going to call the binding context. I'm going to write an extension method for that, but I wanted the binding context is the add medicine view model. Uh-huh. And then I'm going to do that. And I'm going to call the initialize command dot execute unit dot default. Oh, does it require me to do change type? Nope. So I have to do async, and I explicitly have to await it. Yeah, that'll do. Let's chop this line. Oh, it doesn't want me to chop the line. Have I not hit the? Ooh, I'm right on the margin. Okay, cool. Okay, so now I know that I technically don't even have to do that. I could just do it when I'm doing the on appearing, but this is fine for now. This way I know that my initialize command will get called. Prism is doing the navigation, so it should be fine. Yep, there we go. Okay, so now I'm getting called. And now I should be going into the failure state. But nothing finishes loading. Uh-oh. Ooh, I broke it good. Oh, because there's no state definition for. Jeez. Wow. Okay. Because I am good at this. Failed. There we go. Because I didn't configure the state. All the rest of my states were configured through like actual unit testing, but I didn't test these scenarios. So, because I'm adding this now just to on the fly to see it on the page. Pardon me. Okay, I got nothing. Configure this the state for failed. Yep, I'm firing the trigger, state machine doesn't get the information. Okay. Yeah, this is where I'm gonna kick the bucket a little further down the road and worry about this tomorrow. I think this should work. I've now at least configured the state. Yeah, I'm gonna stop here for the day. I think hopefully by the next time I see you guys, I'll have figured this part out and we'll be able to move forward and we'll actually be able to like implement a different part of the feature. But I think this is fine for now. Thank you for taking your time and watching. See you next time.